Hello there, comrade. You. Yes, there, you. Right there, the one I'm looking at. You could become the very next Rotten Tomatoes Approved Critic. Now, what benefits, if any, would this entitle you to? Well, that is a question that has an answer. But what are we even talking about here? Rotten Tomatoes has become part of our lives. We've all been there. You're looking for a movie, you aren't quite sure about it, and you go to see its score on Rotten Tomatoes to see if it's any good. And you get two scores, the audience score and the critic score. Now, we've all just kind of accepted this without much thought. Anyone can be a part of the audience, and if anyone who cares to give a score likes the movie, 80% of those people like the movie, and they want to give it a good score, then the movie will have a good score. At least it will have a good audience score. It's really as simple as it can get. Now, but the critic score sits apart. It's walled off from public opinion. It can be seen by the general audience, but it cannot be touched. And this comes up in conversation too. Like, it's a topic of conversation. Like, when you're trying to get to know someone, do you prefer the audience score or the critic score? This says something about you, doesn't it? For example, the Super Mario Galaxy movie has a high audience score and a low critic score. Now, the critics are professionals. They know a lot about movies. They watch a lot of movies. They might have studied film. In fact, they probably don't even call them movies. They probably call them films because they are critics. When they watch a movie, a film, they are seeking novelty, something that breaks away from conventions in a creative and interesting way. They watch Super Mario Galaxy, the critic watches, and they say, the Super Mario Galaxy movie settles for moments of visual inspiration that replicate the little rushes of opening up new worlds in one of the games, while letting almost every character stagnate into bland affability. The audience is you and it's me. Well, maybe it's not either one of us, but they are of the people. The audience wants a movie that they enjoy watching. It's really as simple as that. The audience says about Super Mario Galaxy, very fun and nostalgic. 4 out of 5 stars. And so you ask yourself, and others ask you, they ask me at least, which one represents you? Are you an elitist snob who is incapable of simplistic joy, who must overanalyze everything and pretend like the 4-hour-long Belgian movie about a single mother doing nothing until the last 5 seconds is one of the greatest movies of all time? Or are you an uncultured swine who can only enjoy formulaic corporate slop with a predictably happy ending? The two genders. Audience ratings often give high ratings to movies that might not be considered great art, or low ratings to movies that demand more attention or might be a little slow-moving. They suffer from political brigading, where people who care very much about one particular aspect of a movie came to give it a rating without having seen the movie or really caring about the genre as a whole. But critic ratings can be out of touch, and they, by design, favor a subsection of the audience over the whole. It's literally less representative than the average person's experience. By design, that's just how it's made. But really, who are these critics who sit up on high and cast opinions that have been elevated in relevance? Are they some unreachable god among men with a sixth sense for the beauty of film? Does the Rotten Tomatoes Approved Critic not bleed when you cut them? I say that they do. We all have an idea of what a critic is. A legitimate professional who is paid by some outlet, like a newspaper, to give their opinion because it is valued, but it's really just clearly not the way it works anymore. When was the last time you individually, were going to watch a movie and you decided to open up a newspaper to look through the culture section or whatever it was called, to read some critic's opinion to decide what film you were going to watch that week? Like, if you're like me, you've literally never done this, and you probably haven't seen a newspaper in years. Admittedly, if you were like my aunt, you probably did this the last time you went to see a movie, but I think we can agree that she's kind of an exception. So, who can actually become a critic? Can you become a critic? Believe it or not, you, yes you, the one I'm looking at, you could become a Rotten Tomatoes approved critic. Probably, if you wanted to at least. And if you put in a lot of work, there are guidelines that can help this out. If you want to be approved as a critic without someone specifically hiring you as a critic, if you get a job with the New York Times as a critic, you're automatically an approved critic because you're publishing for an approved organization. Or, if you get paid to appear on TV to give your critical analysis, they'll greenlight you pretty quickly. But without getting hired by someone. They're really two paths forward. And they both involve consistent output for at least 2 years. You can be a written reviewer, publishing on sites that receive at least 200,000 monthly visitors, or you can have your own personal thing. You can have a Medium page or a Substack with 5,000 subscribers. And, you need to be pushing output, making your reviews for at least 2 years. So this is a years-long commitment. This isn't happening tomorrow. The second path forward is to be a YouTuber, where you need to regularly post film criticism for 2 years and have a subscriber count of at least 30,000. And for a frame of reference, if I wanted to reach 30,000 subscribers and become a Rotten Tomatoes Approved Critic, I would need to gain approximately 30,000 more subscribers to reach the number of 30,000 subscribers. Now, this is a field that is changing, so I don't know if they will be accepting, TikTok reviewers anytime soon. I don't know if there are TikTok reviewers of movies. I have to assume there are. They also have a weird rule where if you publish your content through a podcast, you can't submit individually. Instead, you need to apply for the podcast as a whole, as to be an approved organization. And I don't know why the podcaster hate, but I guess if you also publish your podcast as videos on YouTube, you'd still be able to apply individually through your YouTube channel. But anyways, to apply, for the podcast more generally, you need to publish at least 4 times a month, which is a much higher standard. You can publish consistently for 2 years without publishing 4 times a month, and you need to have over 400 reviews on Apple Podcasts with an average rating above 4 stars. So, you too could become a Rotten Tomatoes Approved Critic if you worked at it for a few years and you really cared about it. And what would the benefits be? As far as I can tell, clout. I don't know if you get a lot of clout, but it's kind of a cool thing to say. Imagine you're in a conversation and someone's like, "Hey, do you prefer the audience score or the critic score?" I'm like, "Well, I'm a critic." That would be kind of cool, I guess. Also, maybe people would be able to find your reviews. From what I've heard, it also makes it a little easier to get into early screenings of movies because you actually are a critic. And so you're the kind of person who they'd want to have, early screenings. So you'd be able to talk about a film before it came out in order to, generate buzz for it, which is what the movie people want you to do. And there's another interesting aspect to all of this. The requirement to be a critic, besides just having to be consistent, is you need some level of popularity. In fact, there is actually a whole nother level beyond critic, top critic, which requires even more popularity, which means the thing that separates the critic from the audience is the audience itself. Critics have an audience, and when you are a member of the audience, watch something that a critic puts out, you're making them a critic, which I think kind of reflects the true value of critics. It's not that their opinion matters more, it's that they can express it in depth and in a useful way. Anyone can tell you whether they liked a movie or not, but the critic goes deep into exploring why they liked it or didn't like it. They can analyze the movie, add in additional information that maybe you wouldn't know, or insight the average person wouldn't think of, and they do it so well that people seek out their opinion for their ability to express it. Their opinion has value as art in itself, separate from just the movie. So for just aggregating opinions, all you need is the audience score realistically. It would statistically be more accurate to what you would think. But to look at an individual review, you're probably better off choosing a critic. I care a lot more about someone's breakdown of the Super Mario Galaxy movie than one person saying they thought it was nostalgic, because I don't know what that means. Maybe that applies to them and it wouldn't apply to me, right? But if someone really goes deep into the specific aspects, maybe they didn't like the character development, I could think, well, I really like Mario and I don't care that much. So as long as it's not terrible, I'm probably gonna like it. Or maybe I don't really care about Mario, and so someone, in the audience, maybe the audience was just people who really like Mario. It's not just the entire audience. It's people who choose to be a member of the audience, who choose to give it a score. And so there's a self-selection bias there. And the critics might be a little bit forced into it. The person reviewing the Super Mario Galaxy movie for the New York Times probably didn't like wake up that morning going, I really want to see the Super Mario Galaxy movie from the New York Times. So if they did like it, that would be a huge deal. But for aggregation of opinions, probably the audience wins. But I think the real difference is a good critic can tell you whether you would like a movie or not without even necessarily telling you if they liked it. Maybe I don't need to know if the person at the New York Times liked the movie. They can describe it in such a way that I would know if I liked it. And I think beyond a good critic, a great critic is someone who can add on so much insight that they make you feel and experience a movie differently, even if you'd already seen it. My favorite analyses and reviews of movies are things that change my mind. If I really don't like a certain movie, I like having someone give me their perspective that allows me to appreciate a movie I didn't like before in a new light, and maybe form an attachment to that movie I didn't have before. That's a lot of what I try to do on my channel. If you watch my videos of Mice and Men or Catcher in the Rye, that's what I was trying to do. Those were books I didn't like as a teenager, but I wanted to approach them again now as an adult, to try and find things I didn't see before, to try and enjoy them in ways I couldn't before, and hopefully, I wanted to share that sense of enjoyment with other people who maybe were in positions similar to where I was when I was a teenager, and maybe they'd be able to appreciate them again in a different way. And really, I happen to prefer the critic score over the audience score generally, but I think this is almost accidental to the true benefit of good criticism. I think a good critic doesn't really need the aggregation score. They give you an opinion which has value in itself. That's what I like to think, at least. Now, if you'd like to help me become a Rotten Tomatoes critic, you can subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it if, about 30,000 of you would do that. That would be really cool. If you'd like to talk about the communist undertones and the vegan overtones of the amazing movie Chicken Run, you can click over here. And remember, good night, good day, good potato. Oh no!